History is written by the victors? Or is it? What if some of the events we take as fact were secretly altered, erased, or even fabricated? Could there be hidden hands shaping our past without us ever realizing it? Welcome to Top 5 of the World, and today we're diving deep into 5 times history was possibly altered. Stick around to the end. You won't believe number 1, the phantom time hypothesis. What if I told you that we might be living in the wrong year? That a massive chunk of history never actually happened? Sounds crazy, right? Well, buckle up, because today we're diving into one of the most mind-bending conspiracy theories out there, the phantom time hypothesis. The phantom time hypothesis is the bizarre yet fascinating theory proposed by historian Herbert Illig in 1991. It claims that nearly 300 years of history between 614 and 911 AD were completely fabricated. In other words, the early Middle Ages, also known as the Dark Ages, never actually existed. If this theory were true, then we aren't living in the 21st century. We'd actually be in the 18th. So, where did these missing centuries come from? And more importantly, why would someone fake them? According to Illig, the Holy Roman Emperor Otto III, Pope Sylvester II, and the Byzantine Emperor Constantine VII conspired to alter the calendar. Why? Because Otto III wanted to rule during the year 1000 AD, a time believed to hold great religious significance. To achieve this, they supposedly added 297 years to history, falsified documents, and even created fictional rulers like Charlemagne to legitimize their fabricated timeline. So, what's the evidence for this wild claim? Here are a few key arguments. Surprisingly, there's a lack of significant archaeological evidence from 614 to 911 AD. Buildings, artifacts, and records from this period are scarce compared to other eras. Coincidence? Or cover-up? Illig also argues that the Julian calendar had an error, leading to too many leap years being added over centuries. But Pope Gregory XII's calendar reform in 1582 only corrected 10 days, implying that less time had actually passed than officially recorded. There are also strange inconsistencies in historical records, including a lack of innovation or development during the so-called Dark Ages. Could this be because those years were simply never lived? Now, before we all start rewriting history books, let's hear what mainstream scholars have to say. Experts argue that the Middle Ages did happen, and there's plenty of evidence to prove it. For instance, astronomical observations, like recorded eclipses, align perfectly with traditional historical timelines, meaning no time was phantomed away. Moreover, architectural remains, written chronicles, and even Chinese and Islamic historical records all match up with the conventional timeline. If the Dark Ages were faked, how do we explain their independent documentation? So why do people find this theory so compelling? Well, history is full of inconsistencies, and humans love a good mystery. At the end of the day, the phantom time hypothesis is more science fiction than fact. But it reminds us to question what we know and remain curious about the past. The Mandela Effect and alternate histories. Have you ever been absolutely sure about something, only to find out it never actually happened? Maybe you remember a childhood book called The Berenstain Bears, but wait, it's actually Berenstain with an A. Or you swear the Monopoly man had a monocle, but he never did. What if I told you this isn't just bad memory? This could be proof that we've slipped between alternate realities. Welcome to the strange world of the Mandela Effect. The term Mandela Effect was coined by paranormal researcher Fiona Broom when she and many others distinctly remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. But in our current timeline, Mandela was released, became president of South Africa, and passed away in 2013. So how did thousands of people share the same false memory? Was it mass confusion? or a glitch in reality? Here are some of the most mind-bending Mandela effects that will make you question everything. Did the Monopoly man ever wear a monocle? If you said yes, you're not alone. But guess what? He never had one. Are we merging memories of Mr. Peanut? Or something more bizarre? Many fans of Pokemon remember Pikachu having a black-tipped tail, but officially it never did. Are we experiencing collective false memories? Or are we seeing remnants of another version of our past? So what's really going on here? There are several theories, and some are crazier than others. The most scientific explanation? Our brains aren't perfect. Memory is not like a video recording, it's a reconstruction. The more we recall something, the more it gets distorted, especially when influenced by pop culture and the internet. Then there's the sci-fi explanation. What if we're shifting between alternate realities? Some physicists suggest the existence of a multiverse, an infinite number of parallel timelines where small details differ. Could it be that some of us remember things from a reality we no longer inhabit? And then we have the wildest theory of all CERN. Some believe that high-energy experiments at the Large Hadron Collider may have altered reality itself, creating glitches where people retain memories from old timelines. Far-fetched? Maybe, but not impossible. If alternate realities are real, what about alternate histories? Many historians play with what-if scenarios. What if JFK had survived? What if dinosaurs never went extinct? Could these possible timelines exist somewhere in the multiverse? And could the Mandela Effect be a glimpse into them? The Great Tartaria Cover-Up. What if I told you that history, as we know it, is a lie? That a vast empire, stretching across Eurasia, was erased from our books? Its people forgotten, its architecture buried, and its very existence denied? Welcome to the mystery of the Great Tartaria Cover-Up. Tartaria, also known as Tartary, was once depicted on maps from the 15th to 19th centuries. This landmass spanned from Eastern Europe to Siberia, even touching parts of China and Mongolia. It was a mysterious and enigmatic region, home to the so-called Tartars, a term Western explorers used vaguely to describe various nomadic and indigenous groups. But here's where things get strange. By the 20th century, the name Tartaria vanished from maps. It was no longer considered an empire or civilization, just a vague reference to scattered tribes. Why? What happened? Some researchers and alternative historians believe that Tartaria was a highly advanced civilization with technologies that rivaled or even surpassed our own. But if that's true, where is the evidence? That's where the Great Cover-Up theory comes in. Proponents argue that the destruction of Tartaria wasn't just a natural historical process, but a deliberate erasure. They claim that grand structures like the Kremlin in Moscow, St. Basil's Cathedral, and even certain buildings in Western Europe and North America were actually built by the Tartarians, then later rebranded by modern rulers. And let's not forget the mud flood theory. Have you ever seen old buildings with windows or doors buried underground? What if I told you that many of these buildings weren't built partially underground, but were actually buried by a massive mud flood? Some Tartaria theorists suggest that a global cataclysmic event, a mysterious mud flood, wiped out Tartarian civilization, burying its cities under meters of dirt and debris. According to them, many old world structures, now attributed to European or American architects, were actually remnants of this lost empire. One of the biggest pieces of so-called evidence for the Tartaria cover-up, the World's Fairs. Throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries, massive, elaborate buildings appeared almost overnight for these expos, only to be destroyed shortly after. The official story? These buildings were temporary, made of cheap materials like plaster. But some believe that these structures were actually ancient Tartarian buildings, repurposed and then destroyed to erase their origins. Now, you might be wondering, Why would anyone go through so much effort to hide an entire civilization? One theory suggests that the true history of Tartaria challenges the narrative of our current world powers. If Tartaria was a thriving, technologically advanced civilization that operated independently of the ruling elites, it would mean that much of what we've been told about progress, industry, and geopolitics is false. Others believe that Tartaria was part of a free energy society, tapping into lost technologies that could eliminate our reliance on oil, coal, and electricity monopolies. If true, that could explain why powerful organizations might want to erase Tartaria from history. But of course, not everyone buys this theory. Mainstream historians argue that Tartaria was never an empire, but rather a general term used by Europeans to describe lands they didn't fully understand. They claim that the mud flood is just a misunderstanding of old building techniques, and that the world's fair structures were indeed temporary, not ancient Tartarian relics. So, was Tartaria a real, advanced civilization wiped from history? Or just an elaborate conspiracy fueled by misunderstood historical anomalies? One thing's for sure, history is written by the victors. And sometimes the most important stories are the ones we're not supposed to know. Roswell and the UFO technology leap. In the summer of 1947, something strange crashed in the desert near Roswell, New Mexico. The military claimed it was just a weather balloon. But what if it wasn't? What if it was something far more advanced? And what if, just maybe, it changed the course of human technology forever? The official story from the US government was that a weather balloon crashed near Roswell. But initial reports told a different story, one of a flying disc recovered by the military. Witnesses described seeing strange materials, metal that was impossibly light, yet couldn't be dented, and memory-like foil that returned to its shape after being crumpled. Days after the initial flying disc report, the military retracted their statement, replacing it with the weather balloon explanation. But was this a cover-up? In 1994, the US government admitted that the weather balloon was actually part of Project Mogul, a classified program using high-altitude balloons to detect Soviet nuclear tests. But is that really all there was to it? Here's where things get really interesting. After 1947, the world saw a sudden explosion of technological advancements. The first transistor was invented in 1947, revolutionizing electronics. Soon after, we had microchips, fiber optics, and even night vision. Could these breakthroughs have come from reverse-engineered alien technology? People like Philip Corso, a former US Army officer, claimed that recovered alien technology was quietly seeded into private industry. He detailed how materials from the Roswell crash supposedly led to key technological leaps in defense and consumer products. Was he telling the truth? Or was this just another conspiracy theory? In recent years, even the Pentagon has confirmed the existence of unidentified aerial phenomena. Could it be that Roswell was just the beginning? Have world governments been sitting on extraterrestrial technology for decades? The Roswell incident remains one of the most debated events in UFO history. Was it truly just a top-secret military balloon? Or was it something far more extraordinary? The truth might be out there, but it's up to you to decide. What do you think? Was Roswell a cover-up for advanced extraterrestrial technology? Let us know in the comments. Who really discovered America? We all grew up hearing the same story. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue and discovered America. But what if I told you that wasn't the whole truth? What if I told you that others reached the Americas long before Columbus, and some in ways that will blow your mind? Buckle up, because today, we're uncovering the real story of who discovered America. Let's start with the man himself, Christopher Columbus. On October 12, 1492, he landed in the Bahamas, believing he had reached Asia. But here's the thing, Columbus didn't actually set foot on what we now call the United States. And he certainly wasn't the first foreign visitor to these lands. So, if he didn't discover America, who did? Fast forward nearly 500 years before Columbus. Around the year 1000 AD, Norse explorer Leif Erikson, son of the legendary Eric the Red, sailed from Greenland to a mysterious land he called Vinland. We now know that Vinland was part of Newfoundland, Canada. In fact, archaeologists have uncovered Norse settlements at L'Anse aux Meadows, proving that Vikings set foot in North America long before Columbus even existed. But were they the first? Some historians believe that the Chinese could have made it to America before Columbus, and maybe even before the Vikings. Theories suggest that legendary Chinese Admiral Zhang He, who commanded massive treasure fleets in the early 1400s, may have reached the Americas. Chinese map evidence and shipwreck discoveries in California and South America have fueled this debate. Could the Chinese have crossed the Pacific and made contact centuries earlier? Now, let's talk about some of the greatest navigators in history, the Polynesians. With no modern instruments, they traveled thousands of miles across the vast Pacific, reaching places like Hawaii, Easter Island, and even South America. Some scientists believe that Polynesians could have reached the Americas as early as 1200 AD, potentially introducing sweet potatoes, a South American crop, into their culture. The evidence? Genetic links between Polynesians and indigenous South Americans. But the real first discoverers of America? That title belongs to the indigenous peoples who arrived tens of thousands of years ago. They crossed a land bridge from Siberia to Alaska, spreading across the continents and forming civilizations like the Maya, Aztecs, and Inca. They built cities, developed advanced agriculture, and created rich cultures long before any outsider set foot on these lands. So, in truth, America wasn't discovered. It was already home to millions. So, who really discovered America? The answer isn't simple. The Vikings left their mark. The Chinese may have explored its shores. Polynesians might have connected the Pacific. But the first true pioneers were the indigenous peoples who had been here for thousands of years. The real question isn't who discovered America, but rather, how many different peoples played a role in its incredible story. So what do you think? Are these just wild theories? Or could history have actually been manipulated? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this dive into hidden history, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next deep dive. Until next time, question everything, stay safe, stay curious.